Hey everybody, how you guys doing? I hope work's going well for you. Hope you guys are able to get all your assignments done. This week I'm going to try and send you guys some videos of some new concepts that we're working on. Pretty much this whole week we're just going to be working on simplifying radical expressions. And radical expressions are just things that have this in there, or the square root symbol. It can be a square root, cube root, or anything that has this radical symbol, whether it be in the numerator or the denominator. For the first few days, we're only going to work with just this symbol like this, mostly in the numerator. All right, just a couple of rules. We're just talking about the square root of something, so some number times another number, where a is greater than or equal to 0 and b is greater than or equal to 0. So what I hope you're noticing is that we're never going to be able to simplify these if we have a negative number in there for a or for b, okay? All right. Here's an example I want you guys to write down. The square root of 9x. So what we do is, because there's multiplication in here, we can break this radical up into two individual problems. And from there, it'll become a little bit easier to simplify. Because I'm pretty sure you guys know what the square root of 9 is. All right? So when you do this, you get the square root of 9 times the square root of x. So we simplify what we can and we bring down what we can't. Now we're allowed to leave radicals in our answer as long as they stay in the numerator. And that's something we're going to work on in a later section. But for right now, everything's going to end up in the numerator. So the square root of 9, in this case, we're only going to use the positive 3. So the square root of 9 in this case is 3 times the square root of x. So our final answer would be 3 square root of x. So when you guys get these problems and they're written out like this and the numbers start to get bigger, what I try to think of is, when I look at this number, is this number a perfect square? Or can I break it up into perfect squares, like we're going to talk about in this next example? Okay, so the first thing you have here is you have the square root of 12x squared. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break it up into the square root of 12 times the square root of x squared. Okay, now from here, there's a bunch of different ways you can go. Obviously, 12 is not a perfect square. So I start to think to myself, what are the factors of 12? Well, we've got 12 and 1, 6 and 2, 4 and 3. Okay, I focus on these two because I know 4 is a perfect square. So if I do this, I would get the square root of 4 times the square root of 3, which that's what this is. It just, we broke it apart, okay? And then times x, or the square root of x squared. All right, square root of 4 is 2 times the square root of 3, because there's nothing. The square root of 3 isn't a perfect square, so we can't simplify that anymore. We don't want to use decimals. We're going to leave everything in radical form at the end. And then the square root of x squared, in this case, this sign undoes that exponent. So you're left with just x. And the reason is because x times x equals x squared, right? Remember that from our exponent rules. So this one, the way we're going to simplify is 2 times x is 2x. And then radical 3. Okay, so that would be our simplified answer in radical form if we're asked to find the square root of 12x squared. Okay, I'm going to write out some more examples here and we're going to go over them. All right, so if you guys want to copy these examples down and pause the video and try them and then come back, that's fine. Again, guys, if you don't get this today, this is something we're going to be taking one section from chapter 11 and I'm going to be breaking it up over 3 days basically. Okay, so you just take your time, go nice and slow. If you're stuck or confused, send me a message, all right? All right, so the first one we're going to try is the square root of 45. Next one we're going to try over here is the square root of 200. And like I said, if you guys want to pause the video and try these, I'm going to go through these answers and how I got my answers here in a second. But that way it'll give you a chance, all right? So, square root of 45. 45 is not a perfect square. So what I need to do is I need to try and break that up into a perfect square if I can, or a perfect square times a non-perfect square. So I start to think about the factors of 45. Well, 45 times 1, 3 times 15, 9 times 5. If we're looking at these, 9 times 5, 9 is a perfect square. So I'm going to break this into the square root of 9 times the square root of 5. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 5 stays to the square root of 5. There's nothing else I can simplify, so I leave my answer as 3 radical 5, or 3 the square root of 5. Okay? All right, this one, 200. Well, we know there's a lot there, right? So I think of the first thing I know is that I've got 100 times 2, right? Well, luckily for us, 100 is a perfect square. So we're going to do the square root of 100 times the square root of 2. Square root of 100 is 10 times the square root of 2. Now this is not a perfect square, correct? There's no number times itself that gives us 2. No whole number times itself that gives us 2. So don't tell me 10 times 1 and give me the answer of 10. All right, so in this case, our simplified answer would be 10 radical 2. All right? Okay, I'm going to put up 2 more examples. These both have variables in them. And I encourage you guys to pause this after I write them and try the examples, all right? If you're wrong, you're wrong. But at least keep trying. See if you can figure these things out, all right? I know you guys can do all these problems. All right, square root of 9y squared. And the square root of 25n to the third. All right, and this one, well, square root of 9, square root of y squared. Okay, this breaks into this, right? 3 times 3, so that's why we get the 3 when we pull that out. And I'm showing you guys this because when you start thinking about variables, you're breaking this up to y times y. The reason we can take the square root of something is because this means some number times itself. That's what we can pull out. So we can pull out that y. So this answer would be 3y. Okay? All right, over here, square root of 25, let's write that here, and write the square root of n to the third. All right, so the square root of 25 is 5 times. I would encourage you to write this as n times n times n. Now, an easy way to remember this is for every 2 variables you have inside that match, you can pull 1 out. So these 2 match, so we can pull 1 out. Unfortunately, we're left with 1 in there, so we have to write it like that, and then bring down the 5. So in this case, we would get 5n radical n as our answer. Okay? All right, so as you guys are practicing these, like I said again, this is simplifying radical expressions using the product property of radicals. All right, so do your best when you get to your practice, and there will be another video here shortly for you guys to use for the other part.